The Mayflower, 1620, A Voyage of Faith, A Covenant at Sea, and the Birth of American Self-Governance, Crossing the Ocean for Freedom. Imagine leaving everything you know behind, your home, your land, your country, all for the sake of one thing: freedom of worship. In 1620, over 100 souls boarded a fragile old wooden ship, sailing across a cruel ocean, bound for a new world they did not know. They were known as the Pilgrims. Welcome back to Wretched Production. Today, we are unraveling the legendary story that became one of the foundational narratives of America: the arrival of the Mayflower and the Pilgrims in Plymouth, Massachusetts. In the next 20 minutes, we will explore: why did these pilgrims leave England? Why did they never reach their intended destination? And most importantly, how did a simple document signed on the ship's deck, the Mayflower Compact, become the genesis of self-governance and democracy in America? Let's set sail for 1620. Who were the Pilgrims? Fleeing religious division. The story begins in England in the early 17th century. The Church of England Anglican was run by King James I, and adherence to the Church was the law of the land. Anyone who dissented or tried to purify the Church's teachings was considered a nonconformist. The Pilgrims, who were actually a small group of radical separatists, believed that the Anglican Church was too corrupt to be fixed. They didn't want to purify it like the Puritans. They wanted to separate completely and establish their own church. Persecuted in England, they sought asylum in Leiden, Holland, in 1608. However, life in the Netherlands was not ideal. They struggled to find work, and what they feared most, their children were beginning to lose their English identity and language, becoming assimilated into Dutch culture. They decided that the only way to preserve their faith and identity was to go to a truly new place, the New World of America. In 1620, they chartered the ship Mayflower. On board were about 102 passengers. It's important to note, only about 40 of those people were truly pilgrims, separatists. The rest were strangers, ordinary people hired by a trading company, investors, to seek profit. They all shared the same danger: 66 days on a cruel sea. The Mayflower was supposed to sail with another ship, the Speedwell, but that vessel suffered severe damage, forcing all passengers to transfer to the already overcrowded Mayflower. The journey began in September 1620. The crossing of the Atlantic Ocean was a brutal ordeal, lasting for 66 days. The passengers, including many women and children, had to live in cramped, dark, and filthy conditions. Storm after storm battered the ship, causing one of the ship's main support beams to crack severely. Sickness was rampant. There were records of death, but also a record of birth, with a child named Oceanus Hopkins. The mortality rate during the journey was relatively low, but the mental and physical suffering was immense. After more than 2 months facing darkness and despair, they finally sighted land, but not the land they had hoped for. Their intended destination was the Virginia colony, near the Hudson River. However, due to storms and navigational errors, they landed far to the north, on the coast we now know as Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Navigational challenge, in your opinion. What was the main navigation tool that determined the direction of the Mayflower in the middle of the ocean in 1620? A. Magnetic compass. B. Satellite, GPS. C. Astrolabe and quadrant stars and sun. While the compass was used, the astrolabe and quadrant for measuring the height of the stars and sun were key to determining latitude. A small error could take you hundreds of miles off course. The Mayflower Compact, a covenant on deck, landing outside the contracted territory Virginia, created a huge problem. The strangers on board began to rebel. They argued that since they hadn't landed in Virginia, their contract was void. They declared, "No one has the authority to command us." This was the first political crisis in America. They were on ungoverned land, and internal division could mean death for everyone in the coming winter. To prevent anarchy and ensure survival, the Pilgrim leaders, led by William Bradford and the strangers gathered below deck, they created a short, monumental agreement document, the Mayflower Compact. Core of the Mayflower Compact. 1. Purpose: for the glory of God, the advancement of the Christian faith, the honor of the king and country, and for colonization. 2. Covenant: all signatories promised to covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic. 3. Laws: they pledged to enact and obey just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices for the general good of the colony. Signed by 41 adult men, the Mayflower Compact was not a constitution, but a social contract. For the first time on American soil, settlers voluntarily agreed to establish a government based on consensus and laws made by the people themselves, not the authority of a king. This was a powerful precursor to the concept of self-governance. Plymouth, landing, survival, and Thanksgiving. After signing the compact, they sailed again and found a better place to settle across the bay, Plymouth. They landed in December 1620. But the horror was just beginning. The first winter in Plymouth was the Great Sickness or starving time. Half of the 102 passengers died. Those who survived, like William Bradford, recounted that among the survivors, there was an extraordinary altruistic spirit, serving the sick and dying. A miracle arrived in the spring. They met Samoset and then Squanto of the Wampanoag tribe. Squanto was key to their survival. He taught them how to plant corn using fish as fertilizer, how to hunt, and how to survive in the new land. In the autumn of 1621, their harvest was abundant. To celebrate their success and the new alliance with the Wampanoag tribe, the Pilgrims held a 3-day feast with Chief Massasoit and about 90 of his warriors. This event is popularly known as the First Thanksgiving, the legacy of covenant and liberty. The story of the Mayflower and the Pilgrims is not a simple, happy ending, but a story of resilience. They didn't come for gold, but for religious freedom, a belief they valued more than comfort, even life itself. Their legacy is encapsulated in the Mayflower Compact. This document proves that government can be built not on the divine right of a king, but on the consent of the governed. This was the powerful seed of self-governance that grew into the Declaration of Independence and the American Constitution. However, this story must also be viewed critically. Their success came at the expense of the Native Americans, who would eventually face displacement and disease. The Pilgrim story is a complex opening chapter of American history, celebrating freedom and resilience, while also reminding us of the steep price paid. Please leave a comment. In your opinion, was the Mayflower Compact primarily a religious or a political document, and why? If you want to delve deeper into the roots of American history and governance, make sure to subscribe to Retcha Production and like this video. See you in the next epic story.